Hey guys, so I was asked something that I found really interesting in the comments section, and that was how much did it cost you to start what you do? And this sends my mind off into a very spiritual place, because the truth of it is that the real cost of starting what I did, for all there was a monetary cost involved, was in my self-discipline. Absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, the true cost was in my self-discipline. When God first called me to Tanzania, I was still smoking cannabis. I was addicted to cannabis. I was addicted to cigarettes. I was still drinking alcohol. However, I was on a journey at least. I was on a path to self-improvement. But when God first ever called me here, when he first ever told me that you are going to Tanzania, I was still an addict. And I had no intention of going to a developing country addicted to anything. And I think God knew that. He knew that that would be the rocket behind me to make me start on my journey of self-discipline. Now, financially speaking, which I will speak of as well, I came here I had £7,000 in savings. Now, I bought my first flight, which cost like around about £800 or something like this, I think, at the time. You can get them cheaper now, but it cost me around about £800 at the time, because I booked it quite late. I then came to stay at this NGO. Now, this is where the grace of God comes into it all. I came here then with around about £6,000. When I got here, there was a man in charge of this NGO, and he was completely corrupt. Now, not many people know this, but there's a history to this site where Feather's Tail is, that there was actually an attack by armed bandits. And that happened a year before I arrived here. And some persons who were not from Africa, who were from Europe, were hurt in the attack. And when that happened, everybody left. And this remaining member of staff took over as the director, and unfortunately it turns out he wasn't a very disciplined man, and a lot of the money disappeared, and a lot of the money was misspent, and even to the degree that children were created so as he could pocket the money. And I was stuck with this horrendously corrupt individual, and I paid to stay here for the first 2 months. And I paid him £2,000, nearly £2,000 to stay here for 2 months. Because I was coming as a volunteerist of sorts. This is what was happening. And that would cover everything and help me implement projects and so on and so forth. So from there, I had £4,000. Within 6 months, that was gone because I spent it on people. I wasn't fundraising. So I spent that money on people in the community who needed it immeasurably more than I needed the comfort of having some numbers in my bank account. And I remember the very last of my money was spent on a young man called Johnson to go to university. And Johnson is still one of my closest friends in life today. And he is a straight A student studying microfinance, and he will be going to do a PhD eventually. I'm hoping to get him a sponsorship overseas as well, with a university or something, because he is just so profoundly intelligent, this guy, but he's just a wonderful young man as well. And that was where I spent the last of my money. And when Fritzi first met me, I was as poor as any Tanzanian. And it was at that point I started to open a fundraising. I opened a Facebook page to start fundraising. Otherwise, it was go home. I had nothing to help people with anymore. I was broke. And when Fritzi met me, Fritzi still remembers that I was so broke that I had holes in my shoes. And those of you who don't know why I say it's very important to create the bank account in God, I had no intention of using any money donated on myself ever. And my clothes were old and tatty, my shoes were worn out, and I said to God, I don't know what to do. I leave you to provide for me. And I'd read about yogis who had sat under trees and going hungry until someone brought them food, and I said, this is the same faith I'll put in you. And when I flew home that Christmas, my family sent me a flight to visit at Christmas because they missed me. They helped me with the money for the flight. When I flew home, the KLM lost all of my bags. And because of that, they gave me €1,000 and I bought new clothes. And then, just before I left England, a friend of mine, James, who was at my wedding, but we weren't really close back then, said, I have some shoes, maybe you can use them to start a running club with the kids, and most of them were my size. And I still wear some of those shoes today because my running shoes had gone missing in the luggage as well. And this is how God provided for me for all I was flat broke at the time and had no money. So ultimately I started with that amount of money, but it wasn't really an important factor because God called me here and I came because he called me. I was fasting, I saw my sign and I came. Now, I didn't come with enough money to buy an acre of land and to buy a house. But because I stuck it out with this character who was corrupt, eventually I said to him, I know what you're about and you'll never get another penny from Western donations because they'll come through my UK bank account. And you'll never get a penny, you might as well leave. And he left. And he's gone. And the next charity he went to contacted me to ask me if he'd done anything bad because he'd done something bad to them. It was my relationship with God that allowed me to keep the faith, because it was a horrible 6 months for me alongside such a character. But I knew God had called me here with a reason. And within 6 months of coming here with not enough money to do it at all, I was sat with no money, my laptop, NGO, registered NGO structure, with a small house built on it and an acre of land. And that's where it began. And it had very little to do with money and more to do with my relationship with God and how I had absolutely surrendered to service to others in the name of God. In part as a means to try and right the wrongs of my past, which is the wrong thing to do. But a saint is a sinner who never gave up. I'm not saying I'm a saint. It's just that saying teaches you something. I believe St. Augustine said it teaches us something important. That people who do bad things can actually become half-decent people because those memories drive them. You can't forgive yourself, in short, and you feel you need to do something to find forgiveness with God. For all he forgives you regardless, you can't forgive yourself. And this drove me, as well as the love I was experiencing in fasting and this eternal, unconditional love that I felt from God. I wanted to transplant it onto other people because I'd felt it and I knew it was there. And I knew it was free and in abundance, and all we had to do was, as I've said before, polish our lamp. As our lamp's getting more and more soot from a flame, we meditate and let that light out, and we cleanse ourselves of the carnal mind and go free with our energies and let it pour out onto other people, just as God had allowed it to pour into me whilst I was fasting. And that's the most important thing, is having your faith in God. It's not about the money. Of course you'll need to, but God, this is God. God can get you the money for a plane ticket. If you're supposed to do something overseas, if you're supposed to start something in your community and it's going to change everything, God can get you it. God can do it. He brought me here within 6 months of him calling me here. I just so happened to be sitting on a piece of land that I now had the documents to and a house. And then I sat in that empty house for a long time on my own, saying, well, this house is wasted, God. You should use it for something. But he was testing me. He was making sure that I was strong enough. And then he sent me the first child. And the first child came into my care. And the day before he came in meditation, I heard a voice say, take my children into your home. The next morning, I was immediately obedient when the social worker brought me a child and said, he's homeless, his family's died. And I said, he has to live with me. God told me this last night. And so it began. And you have to just prove to God that you're absolutely, completely, first of all, disciplined, and thus you can be completely obedient. And this is where it was. My true bank account was in my relationship with God and my spiritual practice. It wasn't actually in the money, because all of this was built from first of all, the kindness, love and sharing of all the people around me. And on social media, of course, that financial aspect of it comes into it. But God will provide for that as it goes along. But how this all began was not from money from my pocket doing this, that and the other. The first lady to build a property here where the first single mother with a disabled child moved in, held a coffee morning fundraiser and raffle, a Roman Catholic Christian lady from Northumbria, I think in England it was. And that started Feathers Till. But all I did was pray. I said, I'll take this homeless woman and child into my care, but I don't have a house for them. And so it was. But right now, to build everything here around this area, I would have to go through my accounts, if that's what you meant, to find out exactly how much was spent on labour, building, so on and so forth, plumbing, electrics, all of that. It's all registered. Everything is submitted financially with regards to our accounts every year to the government here, and it's audited on both sides of the water. But I think what you meant was how much it cost me to start it, and that's why it's so interesting for me, because in truth, what it cost me was my flesh, because it was in surrendering it in meditation that God brought me here, and in fasting. And in doing that with a repentant heart, absolutely repentant heart for everything I'd done in my life, because I was not a good guy, then he saw my obedience, and then he began to make the miracle happen around me. And if he can do it with me, he can do it with you. I heard about a young lady in Nepal somewhere who spent all of her money building the foundation of a children's home and didn't have, if you know her name, then put it in the comments below. Sorry, I forgot her name. I'll probably remember after. She didn't have the money. She went to America and she won a competition. She won a bizarre competition with some makeup thing like Weller, and won $20,000 or $50,000 or something, and built the children's home because of it. You know, this is how God works. But you have to walk towards him so as he can return back to you the manifestation ahead of you, which is ultimately his will. You know, I have many desires for this place, to build the new children's home, to build this, and it'll come in its own time, because God brought me here, and if I'm desiring that new children's home, it's God's desire. It's not my desire. But he's just aligning what he needs to align, that's all. So, and making sure that I am as disciplined as I can be, and that I keep living by the same adage I've always lived by and will continue to live by as long as I am in charge of all that we do here, this community, these children, this charity. And that is that God cannot fill a purse until it's empty. And thus these massive charities like Children's in Need, who have £80 million invested in the stock market, are a joke, because God can't fill that purse until it's empty, but they don't have faith. They are not an operation based on faith. And I'm not taking away from any good works they might have done. It's not what I'm doing. But what I'm saying is we will always run that way. We will never save money while I've got a hungry child. If a child is hungry in front of me, they will be fed. We will not put money in a bank account. If children don't have a home and we have money to start building a home, we'll build a home. Of course, you have to manage the finances, but this is a key aspect of what we do. God can't fill a purse until it's empty. So empty the purse and let him refill it. Have faith that he'll refill it. But that's what I did when I came here. I emptied my purse and God refilled it abundantly, because he knew I didn't want to spend it on myself, I guess, because I don't like money. I don't like shopping. If I go inside a shop in the West, I feel sick. I feel sad by the depression. I was in a shopping centre with Fritzy and I felt absolutely drained by the lifelessness of it. Couldn't see a single plant or a smiley face anywhere. Had to get out of there. And this is, I guess, why. But this is where the true cost lay in your spiritual discipline. God bless, guys. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as it really helps us to grow the channel and with it help more children here in Tanzania. Also, don't forget you can support our work by sharing with children in crisis here. Be it sharing for a particular need, or even sharing one-on-one support for education, housing, food and medical care. It can be done for as little as the cost of a cup of coffee a week back in the West, after all. Just visit www.sharetanzania.co.uk to find out more. Lastly, remember you can also support us via Patreon, www.patreon.com/featherstail, and help keep us here in Tanzania to continue our work. The links for the website and for the Patreon are in the description box of this video. Love and light, guys. See you soon.